That might be. Yeah, like autofill from Adobe Photoshop, but like in VR, like that would be huge. You know, or we could just do a desktop editor for mobile games. I don't know.
Yeah, who knows?
I'm not bitter.
Yeah. Careful, Ubi. I'm on a low sodium diet right now.
It might come. Yeah, like.
All right, welcome back to the Worlds Beyond podcast. My name is Don Kianian.
I'm Benjamin Wiener.
Scott Harris.
This time we are here to talk about all the trends and topics pertaining to the VR, XR, AR industry. And we've got a wonderful guest with us, Scott Harris. He's been in and around this space for many, many years. He and I personally, we go back about 10 years. We're working at a Silicon Valley technology startup together. And since then, we've been collaborating and working on projects together, both in Horizon Worlds and outside of Horizon Worlds. And he's got a lot of experience and a lot of great tips and insights for up and coming creators, especially when it comes to some of the higher end VR and XR technologies that are out there in the space. Before we dive in, Scott, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, hi, my name is Scott Harris. It's true. I met Don when I first got to Silicon Valley about 10 years ago. I started with Bryce in my parents' living room when I was like 15, fell in love with it instantly. Even loved it before that, but didn't have enough money or resources to do stop motion. So I just had to wait until computers gave us infinite resources. Went to school for computer animation in 1999 and ended up getting a job at Nickelodeon when I was 19. I was still in school. Spent most of my early career in 3D design. First Nickelodeon, then I went to Europe to make music videos. Then if that wasn't cool enough, I went and I got a job at a museum of natural history in New York City, where I was a museum exhibit designer. And that's where I became an interaction designer. Just my whole career, I've been trying to use 3D in really interesting and unusual ways. Up until now, I am currently a spatial interaction designer at Toyota. I work both within research at the Toyota Research Institute and Woven by Toyota, which is their production focus branch. And I do a lot of spatial interaction design for concept vehicles, the cabin of production vehicles, and VR prototyping and AR prototyping to kind of bring new concepts to life. Awesome. As well as, and I do this little thing called Horizon too sometimes.
Yeah, I was about to say, yeah, you were kind of the catalyst for me getting any sort of exposure to Horizon Worlds. You were kind of one of the first people to get one of the Oculus headsets, dive into Horizon Worlds, start making experiences with you and kind of just going around and testing out some of those capabilities. I mean, in the last podcast episode, I mentioned that I had started working on a kind of chill space world that was supposed to be like a bonfire with beer pong and stuff. You were actually the main collaborator on that world with me. And if anyone hops into those worlds, they'll probably hear your voice in those little sound cubes that we have scattered around that world. But yeah,
voice acting. I mean, that's my real
exactly.
best skill is voice acting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And Ben, why don't you, how did you and Scott get to know each other?
I don't know if I even remember. I mean, we were both very involved in the closed beta. Scott's Game Grid was very popular. It was in the Plaza at the time, which was the Horizon Central of way back when. I think I met Scott in like an IRL meetup was when we really started hanging out, and I met him in real life. But we were both a part of that sort of very close cohort of closed beta users.
The way I remember, you're right. Once we met in person, we became friends really fast. But I think I remember the first time we hung out was we were in a beta for exchanging variables. We were able to. There was a little test to exchange variables from one world to another, which was very new. And we were able to have, if you did something in Ben's world, you would get a special disc in Game Grid. Right. That was the first thing we did together. Yeah. And then we're part of the Neon Oasis together.
Yeah. The UFO.
Yeah. You've mentioned Game Grid. Why don't you tell us a little bit about some of these worlds in Horizon that you've built, Scott, and what some people might be familiar with of the experiences you've designed?
Okay. All right. Well, if we're talking about Horizon first, I was there since close to the beginning, I think. I think it was the second wave of beta users. So October of 2020 or 21. Yeah, something like that. So Don, I asked you to come in. You were there when I created the first platform. I was messing around with Don. I was trying to show him something. I was like, a lot of stuff is not too far along yet, but the physics are really something that you could play with now. So we created a platform, which ended up being the Game Grid platform. And you could throw a disc and you can make the platform, tile on the platform disappear. I got in October. I played around with the tools for a little bit. Had you come in, Don, and then I met and then I was just playing. And the first game I did was I didn't know coding yet, so I was like, okay, what can I do? I got to play with physics because it's the strongest part of this thing at the moment. Throw a thing at a tile, make it disappear. This works great. There's some really, really heavy nostalgic content from the 80s that you can kind of imagine people wanted to create. So 90% of a game, functional game, in like half an hour. And then the rest was, oh, wow, wait a minute. Scale and sense of presence is the most important thing after the capability of physics in here. So the rest of the game was just, how do you make this very, very simple action fun and not break and stop people from like causing chaos, which I think is like a majority of VR design, is just making sure people have the interaction you want them to have and not ascending into chaos. So let's make sure only 2 people could be out there at a time. Let's give people a place to watch from. Let's make a mechanism so someone could decide who's next. And then around and around we went. And that became Game Grid, which was, I believe, the first user-generated multiplayer game on Horizon way back then.
And it was before the desktop editor was a twinkle in the Horizon team's eye.
It's like half a decade.
Right. Yeah. It was really remarkable. It's all in headset building. I
know we're going to get into this, but like, that's the funny part that we're probably going to touch upon here is like, I've been doing this for a very long time. I mean, for a 44-year-old, I've been in the professional industry since I was 19, right? So a long time. Mm-hmm. And I have been on a desktop computer forever. And I didn't think about it too much when I worked at the Museum of Natural History, but being in a museum exhibit design, I call it now, it's like AR before AR. Like you were designing for a space, right? Someone's going to walk through that exhibit door. Someone's going to walk up to a kiosk, or someone's going to walk up to a physical object. And you could do crazy things like project an animation onto a dinosaur. Someone walks up to a dinosaur model and then all of a sudden it projects its heart, and the heart could animate, beat, something no one's ever seen before in real life, right? Then we get into Horizon and wow, like, okay, this is like infinite museum exhibit design. Like you could just create this space that gravity doesn't apply. You can bend all the rules and you're building in 3D. That's what got me into Horizon in the first place. So you mentioned the desktop editor. I'm like, that's not new. That's like the way it was before.
I remember in the like early days when you were telling me about building experiences in Horizon and trying to convince me to get involved there, you would tell me about how you're building these worlds and how when you're building like or designing something on desktop, if you make a mistake, you see the mistake and that's kind of it, whatever. But you were telling me how there were times where if you make a mistake in Horizon Worlds, you put on the headset and you actively get nauseous because like directionality isn't the way it's supposed to be, or like the way your brain is perceiving movement isn't lined up with how your eyes are seeing it in the headset or something along those lines, right?
Well, that was like, okay, so that was like, I remember that conversation. That was before in headset building, right? Because like 2019 and before that, I was one of those people who ran out and got the Oculus and a $1,500 computer from Best Buy the minute the Oculus came out. Mm-hmm. Yeah, in the very beginning, you get into Unity, you get into 3D program, you start building something, you think, oh, this is going to be great. Then you make the build, then you get the headset on and you're like, oh, the scale's off. People cannot move around this way. Your jump mechanism that you thought was going to work is really going to make someone throw up, that type of stuff. Yeah, that was in the beginning. That's what it was. You'd make a build in Unity and then you put on the headset and you see what you get. Like how close is it to what you thought? And in the beginning, when no one had ever done this before and nobody had a lot of experience building in VR, you'd build something in Unity, you put your headset on, and then you'd be like, you would be punished with pain and nauseousness if you did it wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a true trial by fire for VR experience developers, huh?
Yes. Yeah.
Now, fast forward, you at Toyota and Woven, you're doing a lot of these kind of interactive experiences and designing these interactive experiences outside of the world of Horizon now, right? Can you talk a little bit about some of those projects and what kind of work you're doing outside of Horizon in the AR space?
Yeah, sure. I mean, like I do have to be careful about what I say, because obviously in research, there's a lot of things you can't talk about. I mean, the research side, you're looking at what are things going to be like 5, 10, or 15 years from now? What kind of technologies are going to be prevalent in the world, and what can we use specifically in the auto industry to make things safer, right? It's not about making people drive their car longer, or, sure, people want to sell vehicles, but it's all about like, how do we help people understand what's going in the car? How do we make it safer? If you want to look it up, there's a concept vehicle called the LQ, the Toyota LQ. And in 2019, it had the largest augmented reality heads-up display on the market. And it was a concept vehicle, and we showcased it at the Olympics. Now, this piece of technology had this incredible capability of putting augmented content directly onto the road in front of the driver. And this was the only Toyota demo at the Olympics where the demo viewer was going to drive the car on a test track and experience this AR content. So it'd never been done before, not in that way. I guess back in the teens, everyone was designing what AR could be, because you couldn't really do it yet. So it was like all these like very beautiful videos of like, wow, look, like coins on the ground, and and this thing and that thing, but it was all fake video. And this was our chance to do it for real. So like, I worked with the engineers. I understood the capability of the hardware. The pre-visual designs they had didn't match the area of the windshield that you were going to be able to see when you were sitting behind the car. So I had to first thing you got to do is break a few hearts. I know we all think, half these designs are not possible. If you want to highlight, a bridge, a tunnel entryway, and like show its height, well, the heads up display isn't going to be able to show you the area. It's not the AR overlay is not going to overlay with the edge of that bridge. So you're just not going to be able to do that. But you could do these other things instead. So I guess what I'll say is like, I work with a lot of research and scientists, and sometimes what people think they want to see is not possible. But once you understand the limitations and the benefits of the hardware you're working with, you can surprise people with what is possible. And that's what I do most of the time with most of my work. I'll use tools, I'll use hardware, I'll listen to the goal, and I'll come out with interaction designs that surprise people. I think we did that with Game Grid, and I do the same thing, in the auto industry. So wherever I am, I'm just trying to use the tool to its max.
Yeah, and you've been in, like you said, you've been in this industry for quite some time now. So like, I'm sure what wasn't possible when you were first getting involved in designing these types of experiences, now some of those things are possible given current technology and things like that, right? So are you seeing any like trends of technology development where maybe something currently isn't fully possible? Maybe it is through a workaround or something, but there's enough demand for these types of functionality that it might make its way into the mainstream at some point down the line?
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess the same way we were just saying that in headset building was like I think that was the major breakthrough horizon. With AR, it's kind of funny. Like people gravitated to VR because AR wasn't possible. AR is silently becoming more and more possible right now. So I guess like some of the things we were dreaming up in 2016, 17, God, you just can't do it, but there's an app I'm playing around with right now. It's called Scenery Interactive, and it's on the Apple Vision Pro. It's in beta. Ben, I like this. Like, think about when Horizon was in beta. That's the funnest part. You find out what breaks. You're asking for things. They're super hyper focused on your needs, and kind of that's where beta software is. And in this beta software, they've kind of found a way to make it easy to take 3D content that you build and make it interactive and easily and quickly viewable on the Apple Vision Pro headset. And so, yeah, that's kind of like the next holy grail that I'm just kind of breaking into right now is like, like you have to usually make these like prototypey videos to show things in the way they might be. But now you can take 3D content, USDZ format, which keeps all your textures and animations in one file, and then just spit it over to the headset, and you can view it like quickly and make it interactive. You can touch interactive component and then trigger an animation or make the next thing pop up. And funny enough, it's not unlike in headset building for VR. So all these dots connect eventually. And all the years I've spent VR building, now I feel like that's going to spill out into AR. That's what's happening.
And Ben, how is that impacting some of the work you're doing over at Habit XR? Are you starting to look at more kind of AR focused projects, or are you guys still very firmly in the VR world?
Well, I mean, like we have pretty close ties with Horizon Worlds, and that's where a lot of our business comes from right now. So we're very, very involved and sort of entrenched in that ecosystem. I think that AR is the next big thing. You know, when we're at a point where I can put on my glasses and I have some, you know, even limited AR functionalities. I mean, like the Orion reveal at Connect last year. You know, that's a big step in the right direction as far as like the advancements of AR technology goes, whether it's Meta that makes it or Apple or Google or whoever, you know, being able to have a lightweight wearable get on your head that has spatial capabilities. That's when we're going to see really just disgustingly widespread mass adoption in the same way that we did with, you know, like the iPhone and the way that it sort of paved the way for the modern smartphone industry. I'm really excited for that. I'm really excited to develop for it. It's not something that we have our hands on right this minute, but we're, you know, chomping at the bit. For sure.
You know, I remember hearing about all of these kind of VR, AR type tools when they were first entering the market. And like one of the first things that in my mind helped fuel the adoption and like familiarity with VR and AR experiences was the Google Cardboard, right? Where all you had to do was slide your phone in, and then that gives you immediate access to kind of consume some of these experiences without needing to invest in computer equipment or a headset or anything like that, right? As you guys are kind of seeing these technology trends evolve, do you think the next step for AR is going to be on the glasses, or do you think they're going to go all in on the mobile aspect, kind of like what Meta is doing with Horizon Worlds and kind of pushing creators to develop mobile friendly experiences also?
I mean, look, I'm a huge technologist, right? I'm not here to make mobile apps. Like I made one of the first mobile apps I made was in 2012. It was a long time ago. You know what I mean? Like I'm not going back there. So it's a weird move to me. Maybe they know something I don't know, but like it's just a funny moment because like the Apple Vision Pro came out and there's not much software for it. And if you remember when the iPhone came out, there wasn't much software for it. There wasn't an app store yet, right? The Apple Vision Pro is interesting. The fact that it is a very expensive dev kit, right? And if you've got some type of corporate sponsorship or, you know, if like you're established in life, you could afford one, but not many people have access to it. The software is coming out for it, though. And I'm not just talking about Apple Vision Pro, like all the headsets, but I'm just excited about that one at the moment. I don't happen to have a PC, so I don't use the Horizon desktop, right? Mm-hmm. I do kind of feel like there's a short-sighted decision that kind of cut a lot of people like me out. I don't have a PC. I'm a Mac user, and I'm interested, very, very, very interested in the spatial interaction. So the move to desktop and mobile is almost the complete opposite of anything that I'm interested in, to the point where like they're having $100,000 contest and I'm just not going to do it.
Contest.
$1 million contest. Yeah. Five top prizes are $100,000. Like That's pretty cool. It's a lot of money. I know a lot of people are going to be excited about it, but it's not something that you're going to get me on this podcast to talk much about because it's just not my thing. I'm not here to make mobile apps on a desktop computer. That's just the truth, you know?
Well, I definitely wish that the desktop editor was compatible with Apple, you know, with Macs, but I definitely can understand so Horizon is a UGC platform in the way that like Rec Room and Roblox are UGC platforms. And that's where the population is right now. And, you know, to me, it's like that's really all this move is. I think that of the UGC platforms, Horizon Worlds is best at VR, you know, even including something like VR chat, right? VR chat is fine, but VR chat has the same problems that you mentioned earlier, Scott, where like you have people making stuff and it's in Unity and then they import it and it's like super wonky or janky or whatever. And nothing wrong with a little jank. Jank does really well on UGC, but Horizon just like has a lot of that stuff built in. You make something and you put it out there and it's there. The time between development and publishing is almost non-existent on Horizon.
I think one thing that's important for me to mention here is like, I'm willing to admit, like, or not admit, but this is just true. I'm not a game maker, right? Like I'm not that great at making games. It's not like my main interest, right? I'm an experience maker. So like, it goes back to museum exhibit design. You're going to walk through a space. You're going to learn about dinosaurs. We're going to go do this VR prototype, and it's to show you what this interaction design model could look like in real life, with the premise of saying, do we get it right or did we get it wrong? We're going to iterate on this design, for the sake of creating this experience. So yeah, I'm not, I mean, that's the other part of it is like, I'm not a mobile game maker, so it does seem like, and I don't want to detract, like there's a huge group of people who this is going to be really enticing to. I just don't happen to really be one of them. And like, the reason why I was so into the VR building mode is because you and Don, you and I have gone in, or Ben and I can go in, and we are right there face to face, and we can work on something together. Mm-hmm. And that's the piece I'm most interested in. And VR was the first place where that could happen. But like, it's starting to be able to happen in AR too now. And like, that's kind of like the piece I've latched onto. Time for a shameless plug. You can go and you could play on both the Quest and the Apple Vision Pro table soccer. It's a multiplayer game with an AI component where you can play soccer. You can play with the AI or you can play with another player. I didn't make the game. There's a brilliant guy who I met at a hackathon. His name's Arthur. You could put his name down on the bottom of the screen or something. He made the game. I helped him with some interaction design and some usability components and some 3D assets. But the cool thing about it, yeah, it's a game. But the thing I was interested in, it was the first time at a hackathon. We won the best game in the hackathon. We won the best game category, and we won the multiplayer category. But the multiplayer was the part. How do we get like the things? How do we get the playing field to be in the same spot for both players? How do you control the players? How do you get people to sit across the table from each other so that one person's on one side and you're on the other and you play? So that was like, it wasn't so much that I wanted to make a game for that, but it is a game and you can buy it for $14.99, by the way. But yeah, it was about that experience design. Don, if you came over to my house, or if you were not at my house, we both had AR headsets. Like, how could we work on something together? How could we have a shared experience together? And it's so funny because that's the one thing lacking from mobile phones. Like mobile phone is like, okay, if you came over and we both played a mobile game, I would be on my phone and you would be on your phone. And, we could laugh about it. I mean, me and Ben, we played mobile phone. We played Hopscotch together.
Hell yeah.
We went to Tahoe together, and like I was obsessed with this game for 20 minutes. It was super fun to play on mobile. It was like very addictive and like really fun.
On Horizon Worlds.
It's on Horizon Worlds, and it's one of my favorite mobile games that I've played for Horizon. I understand the value there. It's just not my specific focus.
It's really like, if you remember from the first Iron Man movie where he's building the Mark II and he has his hologram table and it comes up and there's a hologram of the armor. And then he puts his arm in it and starts manipulating, moving it around. And that's the magic. I mean, that's such an iconic moment from that movie, is something that you really live with these in-headset tool sets. And that's part of what attracted me to Horizon Worlds. I know that's a part of what attracted, Ubi to Horizon Worlds. There's nothing like it. I mean, like, don't get me wrong. Like, so I do use the desktop editor on a day-to-day basis because, I use it for work and we have to use it to use all the tools at our disposal. But, nothing makes you feel like a super genius tech wizard than being in headset and you're in flow and you're grabbing things out of the headset and you're doing your code block coding and then you hit play and it works and you're in it and it's there. And then being able to do that with somebody else, I mean, that's magic. That's magic.
Yeah, I mean, I can just speak from, my limited experience in Horizon Worlds from way back when. That was some of the most fun I've ever had building something, was just being in that world with Scott and just messing around and like walking over to the corner of my world and seeing that he had left some like weird little sound box somewhere, so that I got surprised with a random note. Or I think you built like a sunflower in front of like a cabin that I made, and you made it so whenever someone goes near it, he gets all angry and like spits at them or something like that.
We were just jamming. We were just doing whatever, because that, and oh God, that was so much fun. And if we went back in there today, we'd have all these like nostalgic moments for a place that doesn't really, I mean, it exists, but it's a digital space, right? Like, it was just a lot of fun. And gosh, I mean, that was a couple years ago, man. Like the ability to manifest whatever you're thinking quickly is even stronger now. It is the most powerful part of the creation process, is just to go in there with another person and be able to, like, especially someone who's new. Oh, you want to learn how to do this? Look, you can. We can make it so when you put the record on the record player, the song plays. Like, that's a magical thing, right? Those were good times.
You mentioned, you mentioned in this experience, the tabletop soccer game, that there was an AI component involved in that as well, right? Like, can you talk a little bit about
when you say AI? Did you mean CPU or did you mean like LLM?
You got to have Arthur come on and talk about this. I mean, like, I don't know how he did it. Like, I guess in a way, it's like, I mean, you can play. You've always been able to play the computer, right? Even on a regular Nintendo, like Tecmo Bowl, you're able to play the computer. It was pretty good. It is intelligent into where your character is on the field, and there's an adjustable level of difficulty and variableness based on what you're doing. The system reacts to you. So I don't want to overpromise or underpromise Arthur's work, because he's the technical counterpart. And I didn't even really ask. All I did was play it and give suggestions on if it should be harder or more difficult, or ideas of what might be able to happen. I guess this is kind of always true. Same as with Horizon, we have to mention Elastic Plastic, who, if
bring that up.
Don, if I was the guy who brought you to Horizon and showed you how to have fun, he was the guy who, for me and a lot of other people, like, really, I mean, showed us how to script. I didn't even know if I was ever going to script in there. And then he started showing me stuff, and it was kind of like the bug stuck for me. But he is my technical counterpart. He was my technical counterpart in Game Grid as well. Like, I had 90% of a game, but like the throwing mechanic didn't feel really good. And he just popped up, talked to me. We got to become friends, and I said, hey, I've got a problem here. I got 90% of a game, but it just doesn't feel good to throw this disc. It just so happens that's what he does best. So he came in and did that little extra 10% that made the game. I mean, even if I did, it wouldn't have done as well if it didn't feel so good to throw that disc. That goes back again to the collaborative nature of a tool where people could just show up. Now, maybe I'd love Desktop Editor more if someone could just show up in my office randomly and say, hey, what are you doing? Like, oh, you're stuck with this problem. I know how to fix this. That'd be pretty cool.
That's the dream, right? Just having some wizard come in right when you need them to just fix the things that you don't know what's going on, right?
Isn't that what digital nomads are for? Aren't they supposed to be wandering around fixing people's problems?
This sounds like the natural segue into the AI portion of every technology podcast has to have now. We can talk about the AI component, because I guess there's a little bit of that happening now, right? Like,
I was just going to ask, like, broadly, as these AI tools become more specialized, become more prevalent in the market, and become more accessible to people for whatever their use cases might be, whether it's incorporating AI into these experiences or just using AI tools to build the experiences, how are you guys leveraging AI in developing like XR type experiences in games?
I can tell you that we use a lot of it in concepting. Like, it's a really quick way as a game designer, for me to be able to just like type in something and say, like, God, this is what I'm picturing in my head. Here is a picture, a picture's worth 1,000 words. Send that over to Jalitza, and then she'll be able to whip something up and 3D model it. Outside of that ideation phase and like maybe early prototyping, we generally, everything is bespoke, right? It's all handcrafted. AI is a tool. Never say never, but like right now, it can't replace a good 3D modeler, right? Mm-hmm. Meshy is great. I've seen some like really cool 3D generative, like, mesh generators. they're still not quite there. And particularly for Horizon, which is very picky about how it renders things and like about models that get imported. And like for optimization purposes, you really need your modeling talents to be like super tight. AI has been really helpful in ideating and like creating like, hey, make something like this, you know, but it's not something that ends up in our final product. I know there are people who are using like the audio generators with some success. For the most part, it's we keep it mainly focused on ideation.
There's been some huge advancements in like the 2D regular internet portion of this. Like we all know image generation is better now. Now we're seeing really good videos. For 3D and other content like this, I feel like AI is in its like Will Smith eating spaghetti version 1.0 stage. Like Meshy they're garbage 3D file. They're garbage, but they give you a gist of where things are going. And like, I don't know it for a fact, but the same way I can predict that computers are going to be faster next year, this AI stuff it's just going to get good enough soon enough that it's going to happen within time that we should be planning for it. At work, I use VizCom. It's as like a visual assistant. So like when I'm sketching out ideas, I'll have VizCom open and it will like try and guess what I'm sketching. And it does a pretty good job sometimes. It influences me and I influence it just while sketching to get like more ideas out quicker. I guess in the VR stage of things, I think the best example for me would be like, I made this game called Lore of Ubi. It's not the most popular game I've ever made, right? It's not the most popular experience I've ever made, but it's something that I've really wanted to make for a long time. When I first got the Oculus back in like 2017 or 16 or whatever year it was, I really, really, really wanted to recreate the original levels to Metroid, just because as a kid, I played that game so much and I just wanted to walk around inside. And I did it. And then I used VR Toolkit. It was a plugin for Unity to actually import the model and then walk around. I was able to do it. And I did it just for me. And it was so satisfying. Right. And I remember thinking, geez, like, but no one is ever going to see this for me because one, it's Nintendo IP. You can't mess around with Nintendo IP. They'll cut you off right away. And what am I going to do with this? This is such a niche platform. No one's really going to see this. But then years later, when I was in Horizon, I made Lore of Ubi, which is like an ode to dungeon crawlers. Like it's my own. It's original stuff. It's not tied to IP because we've learned those lessons. But like, you still want the nostalgia. So for anyone who played any dungeon crawlers back in the 1980s, this world open. You get in there. You don't know what you're getting into, then this world kind of opens up to you and there's a castle in front of you and you grab your sword and your shield and you go inside and there's all the stuff from those old lava dripping and like big eyeballs looking at you. And like, then there's ghosts chasing you. You have to hit them with their sword, all that stuff. I spent so much time making that because in my mind, I just wanted, I think building it was the thing I liked most. I wasn't in a hurry to finish it because the building it, I was in there, like creating it around me. And I guess what I'll say is, and I thought about this a lot, for AI, if I could be doing a little bit of that and then having it create the surroundings around me based on what I'm doing, almost like, Ben, imagine if your team, like, you know, like what an interesting way to create if you start to create a little bit of something and then your AI assistance is kind of like a goo that surrounds you. Oh, you're building ghosts, huh? Like, let me build a couple other ghosts. Like maybe they're, you know, oh, you're building a dungeon. Okay, I see. You want a purple dungeon, stone walls. Like, let me just kind of like build that out for you in the surface. And whatever you do, I will fill out the environment. That might be, autofill from Adobe Photoshop, but like in VR, like that would be huge. You know, that might be a way that we can go, you know, or we could just do a desktop editor for mobile games. I don't know.
Yeah. Who knows?
I'm not
right?
bitter.
Yeah. Careful, we get on a low sodium diet right now.
It might come. I guess look, you use comedy. Yeah, comedy is a bit of truth, you know. But like, you know, I joke, but like, it will probably come around. I mean, I don't think anybody's so dumb as to completely give up on the best parts of that. I think you just got to bring more people in. I know it will come around.
This topic of like using AI to augment your workflow and build more efficiently or build a higher scale type of experiences is definitely something that we're seeing proven out in the non-VR space with like written content, video content, images. We also heard, I think it was earlier this month, that Rec Room, one of like another really popular, VR platform.
Well, it's a UGC platform that I believe now has a VR elements.
Right. And they recently, reduced their workforce by a pretty sizable margin. I think it was like something like 15%.
16%. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you guys think that this is something that developers should be concerned about, that like maybe their jobs are going to get taken? Or do you think it's more of like what we're seeing from some of like the current AI applications where it's making people work better or more efficiently?
I don't know enough about the Rec Room layoffs to like really comment on like, oh, is that because AI is replacing them or because the platform isn't doing well financially? Right. I need to do more research on that. The top Reddit posts right now, I just threw it up on Google on the side here, but the top Reddit posts are: Rec Room lays off 16% of development team. Will Rec Room get shut down? Rec Room isn't dying. Right. Like there seems to be some conflicting opinions out there. I mean, I certainly think that AI is going to change the job market, but the video game industry right now, like I guess I should say like the digital creation industry right now is kind of in an upheaval. Right. AR technology is coming, but it's not here yet. And VR technology, which, looked really good, particularly during COVID, has sort of dropped, isn't quite as popular and as widespread as I think experts had either believed or wanted it, hoped it would be now. So we're going into a bit of an XR winter, in my opinion. And then like the conventional game industry itself is also in a bit of an upheaval with layoffs. And to make a long answer obnoxious, as my father would say, I don't know.
Yeah. Most of the time I spent on headset actually wasn't in either of these platforms. I was typically in like Vader Immortal or Thrill of the Fight Boxing or Echo Arena, right? These are kind of not UGC platforms. They're
standalone experiences.
Yeah, standalone experiences. Exactly. Right.
But Don, you're an adult with money who can purchase those experiences.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
The market is much younger.
Yeah. I'd be curious to get your guys' take on whether you think the UGC experiences will have a boom with more creators getting access to more tools as they get onto these kinds of platforms, or if you think it's still kind of the standalone experiences market to take hold of.
I got a thought here, Don. It's, don't read this as skeptical. It's actually positive, but against one industry. If your company's job is to take as much attention from people as possible and exchange that for ad exposure, right, then you'll get very frustrated at VR. Because it's not nearly as productive as just having someone stare at their phone, right? I mean, like really, it's addictive. You almost get hypnotized into just looking and scrolling. And then before you know it, you're buying a chair at 2:00 in the morning because you saw it on, All Modern. And not that I did that, but the chair is right behind me. That actually happened.
I just ordered a charcuterie board last night.
Really? Yeah. But when I was at Nickelodeon, I was like, I thought this was my dream job. Just a few years ago, I was on the couch watching this stuff, thinking about how fun it would be to work. And Nickelodeon and MTV, by the way, are the same company. So I did stuff for both. You remember those old MTV infomercial, like claymation things, all that cool stuff? Like, yeah, it's fun. But then I got there and I was sitting there and I worked there for a couple of months and I was like, but I'm just making stuff for TV and like it gets on air and that's like, that sounded big, but now it doesn't. What's next? Mm-hmm. What's bigger? What's more important? And I didn't really find real purpose until I got the job at the museum because I really love science and I really love education and learning. And one of the honest to God metrics at our job when we had meetings about exhibit design, we need some big moments in this exhibit design that kids are going to remember into adulthood. You know what I mean? Like a dinosaur came to life. I saw its heartbeat. And then next to me, I saw how much blood pumped through its body. It was this big swimming pool type thing. Like, oh my God, like, you're trying to create those moments. And everyone is like, how come VR is not picking up fast enough? How come it's not, and it's like, what I chose to do, for better or worse, is like, I'm not running the race to try and get as many hundreds of thousands of people to play this game for as long as possible. My route that I chose was, I will go into very large companies that have lots of time and resources, and I will use emerging technology and show them how the use of emerging technology can do amazing things faster, better, cheaper, more innovation, and surprise the hell out of people. So like, I'll create a VR prototype. I might only delight 100 people, but they're like AAA executives that can move the world. You know what I mean? Or, you know, could put a dent in the way people interface with robotics, you know? Mm-hmm. And I guess for better or worse, that's kind of my niche. That's where I found success. And it's really funny because I love to beta test software. And I guess the fun part in the very beginning is like, they're hoping this thing will work, and they're paying very close attention to a very small amount of people. And like, if you get into a beta, it's like, how freaking clever can I get with this? I see where you guys are going. Now, look, I can take this and I can make a multiplayer game that everyone can watch, right? That was like kind of cool, right? I guess inevitably, the truth is eventually things have to scale. And that's why I don't work at a social media company, or I'm kind of wary of how much time I spend, you know, trying to please them. I think we'll have the most incredible AR and VR technology in the future. And in some ways it's happening quicker, and sometimes it's happening slower. Right now, you can use it to do some pretty incredible things. And at VR prototyping and AR prototyping, that's my niche. That's where I am, you know, and right now you can put on a headset to someone who's never had a headset on before, and you could blow their mind. Mm-hmm. Eventually that will scale someday. You know what I mean? But like, I have to focus on one person at a time. So I try and focus on like the top scientists at the research institute, or the most important executive I can get to come over and try our prototype.
And Ben, that's a very different approach to how you guys at the Habit team are building your games and experiences, right?
Yeah, well, we're in this weird middle space where, I mean, don't get me wrong, like our content, we try to build stuff that we think meta will like, you know, kind of the opposite of what Scott just said. You know, we're definitely catering to meta in a lot of ways, and to their target audiences. I'll say, like, I am more interested in making a little more like refined game. I mean, you look at Roblox, you look at Rec Room, and, you know, and Horizon even, and you'll see like there's a bunch of top games that are just like, yeah, they look like someone threw it together in like an afternoon. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that. If people are having fun and are engaged, you know, great. But that's not the sort of content that I like to build. But our business model is more about helping other studios bring their visions to life, using Horizon Worlds as a tool to do that. Getting in headset, feeling the magic of construction. Now it's finding a new studio and saying, hey, check out Horizon Worlds. Like, you want to build on there? Here's how you do it. Here's the idiosyncrasies of the platform. And when you see the light, you know, the eyes, like, you're like, aha, you know, that aha moment, that's super, super satisfying for me. There's a lot of stuff that I have to say no to right now. I mean, Horizon is still a fairly nascent platform, but it's growing, and it's growing fast. More and more, I'm able to say, like, yes, we can do that. Or like, hey, here's a clever workaround for this thing that you're trying to do. Because, you know, 3-4 years ago, we didn't even have like a tenth of the tool set that we had now, you know, and so I know all these crazy, like, you know, weird workarounds that we did at the time that we can now, you know, sort of apply now to get around more complicated issues. Look, it's a UGC platform. They have to scale. You know, I help with that by onboarding studios and teaching them the platform. And yeah, that's where I find my joy in Horizon Worlds right now.
It's great to have both of these kind of perspectives, right? One that's building experiences based on your passions and your desire to test out new technologies and break things and push the boundaries. And then the other, which is designing experiences that are, you know, furthering the popularity and the adoption of these platforms for, you know, the broad base of people who are experiencing these types of VR experiences, right? So I'm curious if either of you have maybe a couple tips for people who are trying to build experiences, whether it's on Horizon for kind of the goals that Meta is looking to further, or on newer type headsets like the Apple Vision Pro, or I think, Scott, you had played around with the Magic Leap back when also, right?
And I'll try and make it not too long. When I finally realized I was a designer, I was frustrated in a visual communications class in 8th grade. And the teacher came over and he was like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I just can't get this to be the way I want it to be, you know?" And over time, I learned I'm not an artist. I'm a designer. The difference is that I'm trying to find purpose and utility in what I'm doing. And usually that means attaching yourself to someone that you want to work with and like that you kind of want to please, right? My fulfillment comes from reading a white paper and trying to understand what a scientist wants to do. And even though they can't visualize it, or they don't know what it would look like, or they don't know how people might use it, they have this core idea. And I love working for them to help realize that idea. And both realize their research, but also in ways that they might not have pictured it. That's just me. And Ben's about to give you a completely different answer. And we're very good friends. And, you know, like you should try. I guess the answer is like, ask yourself who you want to work for, who you're trying to please. Where are you going to find purpose in your life? Right? If you love making games, make games. If you just want to make a lot of money and therefore you think you're going to make games, maybe just think a little bit longer, right? I mean, there's a lot of different, there's a lot of different places in this world. This is such a huge industry. I mean, this is like when the internet was first starting. Nobody knew what it was going to be. Everybody had all these ideas. And some people really, really went hard into like, I'm going to sell dog food on the internet delivery service. And then other people made all kinds of incredible things. So I'd encourage people to follow their passion. Don't just do it for the money, or don't just try and be me. I have to make a successful game. I'd say think deep and hard about this technology and what you're passionate about and what makes you happy. And unless you want to be an artist, which is just about expressing yourself, find a way to solve a problem or please a group you want to please or delight a group you want to delight, and follow that path. And especially if you're young, beta test some new software. Because you're young, you can do whatever you want. When you get in this new software, like water flowing downhill, you're going to find these things that you really, really just feel compelled to want to do. And the people building the software might actually listen to you. And then you'll find an interesting path that way and make some stuff that you want to make.
Well, and that's sort of, that last point you made there. That's sort of my path in Horizon Worlds, is that I got into the beta. I got really invested in the product, and I, learned it, not just a little bit, but a real depth of knowledge, and then taking that and then turning it into a business, right? And that's a bad habit for me. Everything I do for fun, I have to turn into a business. I can't help myself. But it really took off with Horizon, and it really is about learning. I mean, if I was to give tips, there's two people, right, that we're sort of talking to on this podcast, right? There are Horizon Worlds creators or people who want to be creators that are sort of individuals. And to those people, I would say, in the moment that you say to yourself, wow, it would be really cool to make XYZ, like just go start making it. And not only can it be, but it will be pretty terrible on the first take. But then you figure out, like, that will teach you what you don't know. I don't know how to 3D model. Maybe I should go learn how to do that. Yeah. And then maybe whatever. The other audience that we're talking to are studios that are like interested in Horizon Worlds or just interested in XR in general. And to those people, I would say, go tinker, right? Go get the desktop editor. Or if you're like Scott, maybe go out and buy a PC first, then download the desktop editor. And play around with it. It feels similar to Unity, but of course, like the feature set is significantly more limited. It's going to be a learning curve. It's not going to be easy. And you really have to, if you're like, oh, I'm really bullish on Horizon Worlds, I really want to get like Meta's just invested $50 million more for its creator community. As a business, we want to go in, we want to get our slice of the pie. It's not as saturated as Roblox. It's not as saturated as like Rec Room or some of these other competing platforms, but it hasn't been around nearly as long. So go tinker and decide why you're trying to do it. If you're like, I've got to deal with Coca-Cola and we're going to go in and build a polar bear world for them and it's going to be amazing and it's going to bring millions of people to see it. No, like that's not going to happen. Like that's not a reason to build on the platform. If you're like, I feel like this is going to be really big in 5 years and I want to get in early so that I'm an expert on the platform when it really takes off. All right, let's talk. Like YouTube is a very different platform from TikTok. In a lot of ways, although they are converging, it seems like.
a lot of these platforms are converging, but they're
right. And so your approach needs to be different. You need to decide if that is the sort of content that you want to make, not to scare anybody off, but it's like, if you're doing it for fame and fortune, Horizon Worlds is probably not for you right now. Right. Hopefully soon.
And Ben, that kind of like echoes the advice that you gave on our last podcast with Jalitza, right? Just practice, right? Just go in and start practicing and honing your craft and developing these skills so that when you have kind of that crystal clear idea of what you're trying to accomplish, the problem you're trying to solve, the audience you're trying to serve, right? You have those skills built up so you have the confidence to go out and build those experiences that you feel will reach those people and solve those problems and kind of capture their attention however you want it to, right?
You just got to go do it.
For me, it started off as a hobby. It almost took over things, by the way. It's very addictive. Like this is to go in and be able to create whatever you want is a super powerful thing. I'm compelled to say, well, it should just start off as a hobby, just follow your interests. But also it takes a lot of time at the moment.
Yeah.
I guess the one thing that I'll say is like, if generative AI takes off as quickly as it is in other areas, will that stay the case for long? I mean, you can use Grok and you could prompt a game for the internet, right? I mean, we don't know where this stuff is headed right now. I'm a little concerned about walled garden platforms, but like for WebXR or, hopefully these walled gardens will break down and it will just become more like the internet where anybody can make anything anywhere, right? That's really what I'm hoping for. But I wonder how quick it will be before we really can prompt most of this into existence. And you're just doing the bits you want. And if you're an artist, you get to make the art and you get to prompt a lot of the scripting. Or if you're a scripter and you get to prompt a lot of the art. Yeah. And maybe that starts small too. You're a scripter and you need some bumblebees. Well, we're almost there. You can't make the whole world for you, but like, hey, generative AI needs some bumblebees. Like, boom, they just poof, they're just in front of you now, and you can continue scripting
everywhere.
I'm primarily a sound designer, right? I'm not a coder. I'm not a visual experience designer. You have made sure to note when I've gone off and made some sub-modern design approaches and suggestions and that sort of thing, right? I need someone or an AI tool, right, of your kind of caliber to check me on things that I think might be right, but I don't have the knowledge or the experience to know that, like, oh, people aren't doing carousels on websites anymore, right? You know what I mean?
Knew
like that kind of thing.
I knew if we talked long enough, you'd bring up the story of Don and I were, I just got to Silicon Valley, and Don was one of the first people I met. And I went into Silicon Valley startups trying to get my footing, and here comes Don and throws some ideas, and I really let him down gentle. He wanted to put a carousel on this product's website, and I had to remind him what decade we're in.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. Everyone needs a little bit of gentle steering now and again. You know what I mean? Yeah. I think this has been a great conversation. Scott, Ben, thanks for taking the time to really walk through all of these nuances and idiosyncrasies about developing these types of experiences across these different platforms. Scott, before we leave, is there anything that you want to point people towards? Anything? I know you've mentioned, a couple of your games on the Horizon Worlds platform, but anywhere else you want to direct people to see kind of some of the work that you've been working on?
I don't really have anything specifically to plug. I'm deep in behind the scenes in research in my regular job. I'm not really that much of a poster. I'm not selling anything. I don't have a book.
Go buy table soccer.
Definitely play table soccer. Yeah. But I guess let me take a second to say, Ben, I love your games. I'm a big fan. Yeah. And I like the fact that you can go in there and collaborate with other people, and that not everything has to be a competition or a, cookie clicker, right? It's a really fun game. And it got me thinking, I guess my dream for the future, I always thought we had to do VR because AR was not possible. And suddenly we're living in this crazy world where VR is actually way harder than you thought it was going to be, because you just have to create so much stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe generative AI will help with that. But it turns out that AR and AI are happening faster than anyone would have thought. I mean, 5 years ago, do you think we are where we are right now? Mm-hmm. So just I hope everyone takes some time to rethink about what's actually possible with AR, because like there's just concepts that were developing earlier, or were being thought of in the teens, and even a couple decades back, that we didn't think were going to be possible in our lifetime. And I want a light pair of AR glasses with different information channels and the type of experiences I want, not games. I want to go to a baseball game with my son, and I want him to have some light information overlay that helps him get interested in the baseball game. And then I want that channel, but I want the extra pro channel of like actual user stats and predictions of what's going to happen next in the game. And when a player walks up to bat, I want to see everywhere he hit the ball and all that other stuff. That information on top of the real world. I want to walk down the street in the park and look at a tree and just not even have to say what kind of tree that is. Just if I have the info layer on, it just would label it for me. I think we're going to be there soon. So that's just the type of stuff I want to keep seeing.
I know that I use the AI features on my phone to identify plants and tree species and stuff as I'm out and about in the world, right? Having that on my face, lightweight form of glasses would be so much more convenient than having to pull out my phone, snap a picture, and wait for the AI to recognize the tree or the plant or whatever that I'm trying to identify, right?
And it exists. You can do that with the Meta Ray-Bans right now, right?
In a way, yeah, those are incredible. You can look at something and say, what is that? It's true. See that? We already have it. Never mind. We don't need it. We already have it.
There we go.
Yeah.
Ben, I think we've got links to the Habit XR Discord and the website, but anything else that you want to point people towards? Any new experiences coming down the pipeline that people can stay on the lookout for?
Nothing that I can announce at this time. I can say that we're working on some stuff. I think this will come out after GDC, but maybe I'll see some of you out there at GDC next week. I know I'm going to see Scott. I'm going to see Don when I'm out on the West Coast, so that's really exciting.
Thanks again to everyone for listening and watching the Worlds Beyond podcast. Find us on all social media platforms, YouTube, subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, leave a review, all of that good stuff, and help share the word so that we can continue making this podcast and also get some other industry experts like Scott on to talk about all the cool things happening in the XR space. Catch you on the next episode.
Cheers.
Thanks, everybody.
And yeah, just stay frosty.
I love
Edit
it.
that part out. Edit that part out.
No, keep it. Stay frosty. Stay frosty.
Stay frosty.
Stay frosty, my friend.
It's my new catchphrase.
Yeah.
It's just like my train of thought just ended, and I was like, "All right, Ben, you got to put something at the end of that sentence."
some sort of punctuation. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah. Awesome.